Welcome to Spill the Ink, brought to you by VallRell Events. My name is Kristen, your host, and today I'm with Kel Bruem. She has written the wonderful book, What's Luck Got to Do with It?
Yeah, so What's Luck Got to Do with It tells the story of two magical creatures living in Boston in the modern day. Quiva is a publicist who uses her ancestral leprechaun luck to land artists their first big break. She's pushing back against her family, who wants her to return to Ireland, to the seat of power where her grandmother lives. When she meets Leith as a client, Leith is a hidden mer shark who works as a tour boat operator in the Boston Harbor, and he ends up in the middle of a big social media scandal. So Quiva's hired to try and get him out of it. And the two of them basically just can't stay away from each other for the rest of the book. The point of friction being that she doesn't know he's a mer shark and he doesn't know that she's a leprechaun. And do they tell each other the truth before things get too complicated?
That's fantastic. I enjoyed reading this book so much. I have
Oh,
to
I
tell
didn't know you read it. That's great. Thank you.
yes, definitely. It for me, a lot of the fantasy books that I read are set in like old times,
Mhm.
so or in some sort of a different world or something like that. So reading a fantasy book that was set in modern time in Boston
Mhm.
was so fantastic. What made you decide to set it in Boston in this modern day?
I also predominantly read fantasy that's set not in the modern day. And I think at a certain point you just kind of get tired of everything being lit by torches and no one having pockets. I think that the use of modern technology with fantastical magical powers is like a really interesting problem for people to have to solve and a world for them to move in. You know, in a medieval era, if a man turned into a mer shark in front of a bunch of people, they would probably just like hunt him in their boats with their spears, and then he could run away and it'd be fine. But in 2021, when I wrote the book, everyone has a phone and they bust it out right quick. So like, what happens on social media and in this modern setting when you're trying to stay hidden and stay safe, but like you can be exposed so quickly? And I think that we're putting like a magical lens over top of this fear of behaving in an unsociable or like politically not politically incorrect, I don't want to say that, this fear of behaving in like a way that's not socially accepted, because people will bust out their phone and film it really quickly, and your mistake can end up on the internet for millions and millions of people to see.
What great commentary on how social media has affected our lives. Love that. Let me ask you about your writing process. What do you have a sort of mood that you have to be in? Do you have writing snacks? Do you have a playlist that you listen to?
Yeah, so I'm always really excited to talk about like being in the mood to write, because I think it's something that people can be really precious about. And I think it's something that I really want to encourage other people who want to write or are writing or getting started writing to know that you can write on days when you're not in the mood, and that's actually going to make you a stronger and a better writer. For me, it works out that I also write full time to pay my bills. So I don't have a choice. If I want to eat, if I want to go on vacation with my husband, if I want to buy cat food, I have to sit down and get the words out. And so I already kind of have that discipline and that mechanic there to at least get a word count. What I have found that I have to do to switch between my day job and my romance writer career is set a mood. So and like I'm already there in my brain space. Like today is a writing day, we're doing this. But writing marketing copy for email campaigns is such a different vibe than now I'm going to sit down at 9 a.m. and write a sex scene between some monsters. So I have to, yeah, I do. I build a playlist for every book that I write so that I have a mood and a tone that I'm going for and that I can kind of drop into in that world. I do light a candle. And I usually, if I'm having like a really hard time, like those two things don't work, I make a Pinterest board too to sort of like set like the aesthetic of the thing. So like visually, when I was writing about Boston, I had all of these different pictures of Boston. I had it pulled up on my Google Maps. I had my own pictures that I had taken from visits that I had to Boston. But also I had all of these pictures of whale sharks. What does a whale shark look like? How big is it? What are the patterns on its tail? What coloring is it? And it helps to have that stuff pulled up when you are working, because then I'm not stopping every 5 minutes to be like, Google, tell me these things about whale sharks. And it kind of helps keep the flow going.
Would you say that you're more of a plotter or a pantser?
I want to be a plotter so bad. I want that schedule. I want that structure. I want things to go according to plan. I'm deeply a pantser. Like I give myself some basic points so that I make sure that I don't end up too far out in the wings from like the structure of a solid romance story. But this just happened to me with the sequel that I finished up this summer. I had really detailed flashcards. I wrote all of the different years and points of views and like plot points that had to happen to get to the ending. And then I got halfway through my draft and was like, well, I guess I'm not using any of these now, because my story like took a turn and things got completely out of my hands. And I had to then just make it up as I went. And that was incredibly stressful and I didn't like it, but that just seems to be how I write. All of the books that I've ever done, I'm like, I'm going to be so thorough. I'm going to plot the hell out of this. And then I get into it and my pants come off.
So you're a de-pantser.
I'm a pantser who wants to be a plotter. I don't know if that's like, there's like a Venn diagram for that, but that's where I sit.
I feel like that's fairly normal across the board, is, you know, the what is it? What's that saying? The best of intentions laid to waste, or something of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a title for the second book?
It is. It's called Every Bite You Take.
Every Bite You Take. Is that a play on the vampire love from Evelyn?
Yes.
How long did the first book take to write, and how long did the second book take to write?
The first book I drafted in about 5 weeks. So just the writing part, not any of the editing and the proofing and the layout and all of that. So the draft itself was 5 weeks. And then the sequel, it's a little harder for me to remember because I wrote most of it in like a 3-week span, but had been meaning to write it over 2 months. So again, I was like, oh, I've got this deadline with my editor set for before I go on this trip to Vancouver in the summer, and then she'll have the summer to edit. Like, here's my timeline. It's going to be great. And then that 2-month window that I gave myself just shrunk because I couldn't get myself to sit down and do it.
Wow. 5 weeks for the first book.
Mm-hmm.
Like 3 weeks plus for the second book. That is a really short amount of time to write a whole book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Impressive. So would you attribute that to you being able to set the mood for yourself? Is that how you were able to turn it out so fast? Or is it because you had such a good firm grasp on what you wanted the storyline and the characters to be?
Probably a combination of the two. I've been a freelancer for so many years now that I'm a deadline creature. So, trying to give myself 2 months self-imposed deadline versus like, oh, in 3 weeks, the hard deadline that I put a deposit down for is coming up, just works a lot better. But I would say it has to do with like the discipline of knowing that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write for this chunk of hours. And I'm going to do it for this many minutes at a time. I'm going to take this many breaks in between these sprints, and like having really clear, specific word count goals set for the different parts of the story. So doing a book that quickly stops being like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to write. And it starts being, I know exactly what metrics I need to hit. And that works really well for me. I would compare it a little bit to people's fitness goals. So like, if you want to start running a marathon, you don't just start with a marathon. So like, you don't sit down and write a book in a day because you want to write a book. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to start running 1 mile. I'm going to start running 2 miles, and you work up to a 5K. and a 10K and then a half. And I think writing a book is very much the same thing. It's like, I'm going to write one chapter. All right, now I've got a good flow. I'm going to write a couple of chapters. Oh shit, my deadline's here. I guess I'm writing the rest, the whole second half of the book now.
Okay, so in your first book, we have our 4 main characters. And so if you can give me a little brief overview of each of those, and do those 4 main characters carry over into the second book?
Yeah, so in the first book, the 2 romantic leads are Quiva and Leith. Quiva is the leprechaun publicist. Leith is the Mershark tour boat operator. But we also meet their 2 best friends, and who I would call like their dramatic foils. So we have Evelyn, who is a fashion reporter for a fictional newspaper, and Will, who is Leith's best friend and fellow tour boat operator, who's kind of like the problem child with good intentions. Like, he's the guy in the friend group that you're always worried about, but you love very much anyway.
And do we see, is the second book Evelyn and Will's story?
It is. So over the course of What's Luck Got to Do with It, Evelyn and Will pull some hijinks to get Quiva and Leith together in that, like, well-intentioned, look at how much fun we're having with each other. Don't you two want to have fun with each other sort of setup? And they ended up being like the breakout fan favorite of What's Luck Got to Do with It. Everyone was like, yeah, sure, Quiva, Leith. But like, what about these 2? Can we have more of these 2? And so the sequel does, it follows Will and Evelyn grappling with sort of like the darker side of their relationship. So, you could read either book without the other one, but you're going to get a fuller sense of the character's dimension if you read them both, which was a really fun thing for me to explore.
Well, I agree. I think everyone should read both of them. So
Thank you.
we want to push for that one. So going back to the first book, what was your favorite scene out of that book that you wrote?
Yeah, so my favorite scene in What's Luck Got to Do with It was absolutely Leith and Quiva's first date. I am a sucker for a first date. Like, I love going on I'm a married woman. I'm a happily married woman, and I still just like, I'm like, give me that first date energy. So that was a lot of fun. I think it's the point in any romance story, whether you're watching a movie or a show or reading a book, where things begin to pay off. You've been rooting for these 2 to get together, and like, oh my God, here they finally are. And like, you can feel all of that tension, and you can see them struggling with like how much to give into that tension or how little to give into that tension. What's too much, what's not enough. Oh my God, I put my foot in my mouth. And they go to a couple of different bars and have good conversation. And Quiva is just like losing her mind, horny the entire time. And it just ends with like some very bold movements on both their parts and some very good one-liners that like I was really proud of when I was writing it.
I definitely highlighted a few of those one-liners.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
I agree. They were good. And so I like to do a segment called Kill Your Darlings.
Ooh.
We all know as writers, there are always parts that we like absolutely love having in the book, but either as the writing continues, they don't make sense, or you have to like cut your word count, or for some reason it's just not working. Did you have any segments that you absolutely adored, but you had to take out of your first book?
That I had to take out of my first book. I wrote it pretty quick and tight, so there wasn't a lot of extra room. I will say one thing I wanted to do stylistically that I wasn't able to figure out is I include a few fictional news articles throughout the book as a way to advance the plot without having to have the characters just regurgitate it to each other. Like, we know they're in a social media problem. We know that everyone knows about it. We don't need them to like be talking to each other about it. And I really wanted to like I designed them and everything. I made these like fake newspaper cutout look like they had pictures, they had bylines. And I just couldn't figure out how to get it into the book format without it looking really janky. I had also designed some fake PR materials. So I had designed like a letterhead for Quiva's business and for her friend, I think Tony, who joins one of the press releases that I write in the book. There was a flyer I designed for the carnival, and I just like couldn't figure out how to get any of that into the book because it was the first book I ever put together.
So if money were no issue and one of the major studios comes to you and says, we want to turn your book into a movie, who would you like to have as your fan cast? Top of the pick.
Oh my God. That's like the dream, right? Is like, not only is my book optioned for a movie, but I have input as to who's cast.
Mm-hmm.
I want that. I don't think that happens to even people like Lee Bardugo. So for Leith, I very much imagined him as like a Tom Hardy type dude, like real thick, real gruff, very blue collar presenting is how I would say it. Cause like Tom Hardy's not a blue collar guy, works in the arts, but with like a Kit Harington softness around him. So either of those two, I would be a happy woman. And then for Quiva, I really struggled with this because I wanted her to be much sunnier than she actually ended up being. Like she still has like a little bit of a bite for being the bright side of that relationship. So I think I would like to see someone like I just started watching Abbott Elementary and I really love Quinta Brunson. So I'd love to see someone like her who can do that soft, sunny, romantic type of woman, but who also like will do unhinged shit to like get the problem solved and can turn around and set a boundary. So Quinta Brunson, maybe Mindy Kaling, Amy Adams was in a book or a movie called Leap Year that really inspired my love of going to Ireland. Then that inspired me writing this book. So she's also always on the list.
Okay, wonderful. And then for your second book, for Evelyn and Will, do you already have a fan cast idea for them?
I don't know the guy's name because I haven't watched the show yet, but the lead in The Bear, the guy who plays the chef with the curly hair.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, he just has like this very like intense, like if you've ever worked in a kitchen, and obviously like that's what the show is about, but chefs and like kitchen workers are always like they have like a lot going on behind their eyes and they feel very intense. But like married with Pete Davidson's attitude. So like this guy looks like he could fuck me up, but he's telling this really stupid joke and pouring me more alcohol while we're laughing in the back alley. You know, like that's
Right.
sort of you're gonna get me in a lot of trouble and I'm really gonna like it kind of person.
Hi, everybody. It's Kristen with VallRell Events, inviting you to our August book club. We're going to be reading Rebecca Ross's Divine Rivals. Make sure you put it on your calendars, 7 p.m. PST on August 31st. We'll be having a Zoom meeting to talk about the book.
Evelyn's so hard. I feel so protective of her. Like, have a hard time thinking about who I would want to be her because, you know, you think a lot about like a Sarah Jessica Parker as Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City type because she's a fashion reporter. But her background is that she was a military kid. So she moved around a lot. She was always getting picked on. She really, really loves vampire stories. So like she's kind of a bit of like a nerd and a weirdo. So I'm not entirely sure who I would pick for her. I don't know.
All right. And do we have any other novels in the future that we should be watching out for? Any other ideas that are coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you asked that. I helped to edit my first ever anthology this summer with two fellow writers. So it's me partnering with two gals who run Good Intent Press, and we are releasing One Monstrous Summer. And it is an anthology of new or up and coming writers telling summer romance stories with monsters. So we have a couple werewolves, we have a couple gargoyles, there's some sirens, there is some fiends and some demons. Like it's all very sexy and very fun, and people really took the prompt and ran with it. I'm very excited.
Well, another big thank you to Kel Bruem for hanging out with us over here at Spill the Ink, brought to you by VallRell Events. I have been your host, Kristen. Make sure you check out all of Kel Bruem's social medias. They will be linked down below in the description. And please make sure you are following us here at VallRell Events. We have a new show coming out every Wednesday. So keep slinging, ink slingers.